Right now, as you're hearing this, there's a chance you've asked yourself this soul-crushing question. What's wrong with me that he can just ignore me like I don't exist? Stop. What I'm about to reveal will completely flip your understanding of male psychology.
The man was ignoring you?
He's not the powerful, in-control person you think he is. In fact, his silence is screaming something so loud that once you hear it, you'll never see him, or yourself, the same way again. The psychological bombshell you weren't expecting. Here's what nobody tells you about men who ignore women. They're terrified. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist who decoded human behavior, discovered something shocking. He found that what we project onto others, especially our coldness, our rejection, our dismissal, is actually a mirror reflecting our deepest, darkest fears about ourselves. That man who's treating you like you're invisible? He's not demonstrating power. He's desperately trying to hide his own psychological wounds, his own terror of vulnerability, his own crippling fear that if he lets you close, you'll see through his carefully constructed facade. But here's where it gets interesting. The 3 fatal mistakes most women make, are you making them? Mistake: believing his silence is about you. Right now, your brain is probably creating stories. I'm not pretty enough, I'm too needy, I said something wrong. Wrong. His silence has nothing to do with your worth, and everything to do with his inability to handle the intensity of what you make him feel. Jung called this shadow projection. When we can't face something in ourselves, we push it away from us.
The brutal truth?
You scare him. Not because you're not enough, but because you're too much. Too real.
Too powerful.
Too threatening to his carefully built emotional walls. Mistake: trying to win him back through effort. Here's what most women do when a man starts pulling away. Send subtle texts hoping he'll respond. Post stories on social media hoping he'll watch. Show up in places where he might be. Try to prove their worth through actions. Every single one of these moves is psychological suicide. Why? Because you're playing his game by his rules. You're confirming his subconscious belief that he has power over you, that you need him more than he needs you. Mistake: waiting for him to come to his senses. This is the most dangerous mistake of all. You're sitting there, hoping that one day he'll wake up and realize your value. You're giving him the luxury of time while slowly destroying your own self-worth. The harsh reality: a man who doesn't recognize your worth in your presence will only understand it in your absence, and sometimes not even then.
The signs behind why men ignore women. This will shock you. The attachment avoidance pattern.
Psychological research shows that men who ignore women they're attracted to often have what's called avoidant attachment. Here's what's happening in his brain. He feels intense attraction. This triggers vulnerability. Vulnerability feels dangerous. His brain sees it as a threat. His defense mechanism activates distance and emotional shutdown. He interprets his shutdown as power, but it's actually fear in disguise.
The control illusion.
Men who ignore women often suffer from what psychologists call control illusion. They believe that by withholding attention, they maintain power in the dynamic. But here's the twist: they only feel in control when they know you're not. The moment you stop caring, their entire psychological framework collapses. The turning point: when you become the prize. Phase: the immediate aftermath, days later. When you first stop chasing, stop responding, stop being available, something fascinating happens in his psychology. Initially, he might feel relief. Good, he thinks. Now I don't have to deal with this pressure. But this relief is temporary and dangerous for him. Phase: the crack in his armor, days later. This is where the psychological shift begins. His brain, which was expecting you to be there whenever he decided to pay attention, starts registering your absence. It's subtle at first: a notification that doesn't come, a story you don't watch, a message you don't send. The psychological term for this is intermittent reinforcement withdrawal. His brain was getting small hits of validation from knowing he could ignore you and you'd still be there. Now that source is gone.
Faz, desaikellagikel panik, deis later.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Jung discovered that humans have what he called loss aversion. We fear losing something we have far more than we desire gaining something new. When he realizes you're not coming back, not waiting, not hoping, his brain shifts into panic mode. All the power he thought he had, gone. The control he believed he possessed, evaporated. And that's when you win. The psychological triggers that make him obsess over your absence. Trigger, the scarcity principle. When something becomes scarce, our brain automatically assigns it higher value. Your constant availability made you common in his mind. Your absence makes you precious. Real example, Sarah completely disappeared from Mark's social media, stopped all contact, and focused on her own life. Within weeks, Mark was asking mutual friends about her, checking her profiles obsessively, and eventually reached out with a long, vulnerable message.
Trigger, de misteri factor.
Humans are psychologically wired to be curious about uncertainty. When he knew everything about your emotional state, your schedule, your feelings toward him, you became predictable. Predictable isn't attractive. The transformation. Now he doesn't know what you're thinking, who you're with, how you're feeling. This uncertainty creates obsessive thoughts.
Trigger, de social proof shift.
When you withdraw your attention and start focusing on other relationships, friendships, and activities, something powerful happens. He starts seeing you through other people's eyes, people who value you, enjoy your company, appreciate your presence. The psychology, this triggers mate value reassessment. Suddenly, you're not the woman who was chasing him, you're the woman everyone else wants to be around.
Trigger, de ego collapse.
Men who ignore women often have fragile egos disguised as confidence. Your attention was feeding that ego, even if he acted like he didn't want it. When that food source disappears, the ego starts to starve. What happens? He begins questioning his own value, his own attractiveness, his own desirability. The very questions he was making you ask about yourself.
Trigger, the fear of permanent loss.
The most powerful trigger of all. As long as he believed you'd always be there, he could ignore you indefinitely. But when he realizes you might actually move on, build a life without him, find someone who appreciates you, terror sets in. The dark psychology of male behavior, why this works every time.
De caveman brain vs. The mother mind.
Despite evolution, men still carry primitive psychological patterns. One of these is the hunter instinct. They're hardwired to pursue what moves away from them and ignore what comes toward them. This explains everything. Why he was attracted to you initially, you were a challenge. Why he started ignoring you, you became too available. Why your absence will trigger his pursuit instinct again.
De validación addiction.
Here's something most women don't understand. Men who ignore women are often addicted to validation, but they want it on their terms. They want to know they could have your attention without actually having to work for it or reciprocate it. When you remove this source, he experiences withdrawal symptoms, anxiety, obsessive thoughts, compulsive checking behaviors. The step-by-step psychological transformation process. Week. The detox phase.
Your focus. Complete radio silence. No texts, no calls, no social media interaction, no accidental encounters.
What's happening in his brain? Initial relief followed by growing awareness of your absence. His dopamine system, which was getting small hits from knowing he could affect you, starts craving those hits. Warning signs he's being affected. He views your social media stories more frequently. He asks mutual friends about you. He shows up in places where you might be. Weak. The questioning phase. Your focus. Building your own life, reconnecting with friends, pursuing interests, becoming genuinely happy without him. What's happening in his brain? He's starting to question his assumptions. Is she really over me? Did I misread the situation? What if she's moving on? Signs the psychological shift is working. He sends indirect messages, likes old photos, reacts to stories. He mentions you to mutual friends. He starts appearing in your vicinity more often.
Weak, de panique face.
Your focus, becoming the best version of yourself. Not for him, but for you. This is crucial. If you're doing this just to get him back, the energy is wrong and he'll sense it. What's happening in his brain? Full-blown psychological panic. He's realizing he might have made a massive mistake. The fear of permanent loss kicks in. Signs he's in psychological crisis. Direct contact attempts, texts, calls, showing up. Emotional messages explaining his behavior. Attempts to gauge your feelings through others. The advanced psychology, why some men never come back, and why that's perfect. The emotionally unavailable man. Some men are so psychologically damaged that even the fear of loss won't break through their emotional walls. These men often have deep-seated trauma, narcissistic tendencies, or severe attachment disorders. The brutal truth, if he doesn't respond to your absence, he was never capable of a real relationship anyway. Your absence just revealed what was always true: he's emotionally unavailable. Why this is good news: you've saved yourself years of trying to get love from someone incapable of giving it. The narcissistic response pattern. Narcissistic men might respond to your absence with anger, blame, or attempts to make you jealous rather than genuine pursuit. They see your withdrawal as a threat to their control rather than a loss of something valuable. How to identify this? He tries to make you jealous instead of winning you back. He blames you for playing games. He attempts to hoover you back with minimal effort. He shows no genuine accountability for his behavior. Your response: continue the no contact. These men are toxic and your absence is protecting you. The transformation, from chaser to chosen. The internal shift. The most powerful part of this entire process isn't what happens to him, it's what happens to you. When you stop defining your worth by his attention and start building genuine self-value, you undergo a psychological transformation.
You stop being the woman who waits for crumbs.
The woman who accepts less than she deserves. The woman who defines herself by male approval. You become
the woman who knows her worth.
The woman who has standards and boundaries. The woman who chooses rather than chases.
The energy shift.
When you're no longer desperate for his attention, your entire energy changes. You become magnetic in a way that desperation never could achieve. This isn't manipulation, it's authentic power. What others notice. You seem happier and more confident. You're more present in conversations. You have better boundaries with everyone. You attract higher quality people naturally. The science of attraction. Why absence creates obsession.
The dopamine connection.
When someone gives us inconsistent attention, our brain releases dopamine in an unpredictable pattern. This creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive pattern of behavior. Your previous behavior, consistent attention equals predictable dopamine equals habituation equals boredom. Your new behavior, no attention equals dopamine withdrawal equals craving equals obsession. The psychological reactance theory. Humans have a fundamental need for freedom and choice. When we feel our options are being limited, we experience psychological reactance, a strong motivation to restore our freedom. How this applies: when you were always available, he felt his freedom was unlimited. When you become unavailable, he feels his options are limited, triggering an intense desire to restore that option. The mistakes that will ruin everything: avoid these at all costs.
The comeback todos son error.
Just because he reaches out doesn't mean you should immediately respond. If you do, you're right back where you started. He'll think his minimal effort worked and you'll lose all the psychological ground you've gained. The rule: for every week he ignored you, you wait 1 day before responding to his contact attempts. The explanation trap. When he asks why you've been distant, resist the urge to explain your strategy. The moment you reveal you were deliberately creating distance, the psychological magic breaks. Instead say, "I've been focusing on myself and my own happiness."
De desesperación detector.
Even if he comes back with full force, don't immediately fall back into old patterns. Men can sense desperation and neediness from miles away. Your response should be warm but not desperate, interested but not needy. The ultimate test: is he worth your energy?
De quality check.
When he does come back, evaluate his approach. Is he making real effort or expecting you to meet him halfway? Is he addressing his previous behavior or pretending it didn't happen? Is he offering genuine change or just saying what you want to hear? The consistency requirement. Words are cheap. Watch his actions over time. A man who truly recognized what he lost will be consistent in his efforts to rebuild trust and connection. Red flags. He expects immediate forgiveness. He minimizes his previous behavior. He puts conditions on his efforts: if you do X, then I'll do Y. The nuclear option: when you realize you don't want him back.
De plot twist.
Here's the most beautiful irony of this entire process. Often, by the time he comes back, you don't want him anymore. The process of building your self-worth and focusing on your own life has shown you what you actually deserve. The realization: I was fighting for someone who wasn't fighting for me.
De grout recognition.
You've grown beyond the person who would accept breadcrumbs of attention. You've become someone who expects full meals of love, respect, and commitment. The power moment: when you can look at his return and feel genuinely indifferent, you've won the ultimate victory: freedom from needing his validation. The psychological profile: understanding his comeback.
De genuine returner.
If he comes back with genuine remorse, consistent effort, and real change, he might be worth considering. But even then, proceed cautiously.
Signs of genuine change.
He takes full accountability for his behavior. He doesn't rush the rebuilding process. He shows change through actions, not just words. He respects your boundaries and timeline.
De ego-driven returner.
More commonly, men return because their ego can't handle that you moved on, not because they genuinely want a relationship.
Signs of ego-driven return.
He tries to fast-track back to where you were. He focuses on his own hurt feelings. He makes demands rather than requests. He threatens to leave again if you don't comply immediately. The long-term strategy: building unshakable self-worth.
De foundation.
This process isn't really about him. It's about you building such strong self-worth that you never again accept less than you deserve from anyone. The pillars of unshakable self-worth. Internal validation. Your worth doesn't depend on external approval. Clear boundaries. You know what you will and won't accept. Full life. Your happiness isn't dependent on any one person. High standards. You expect to be treated well and won't settle for less.
De maintenance.
Once you've built this foundation, maintaining it requires ongoing work. Regular self-reflection and growth. Surrounding yourself with people who value you. Continuing to pursue your own goals and interests. Never again making someone else the center of your universe. The ultimate truth: your power was always there. Here's what I want you to understand at the deepest level. The power you're discovering through this process was always yours.
You just forgot it existed.
Every time you accepted less than you deserved, every time you waited for crumbs, every time you defined your worth by his attention, you were giving away power that was rightfully yours. The awakening: you don't need anyone to complete you, validate you, or give your life meaning. You are already complete. The ripple effect. When you truly embody this understanding, It changes everything. You attract higher quality people. You set better boundaries in all relationships. You pursue your dreams more confidently. You become a source of inspiration for other women.
Your next steps, de acción plan.
Immediate actions, today. Delete his number, you can get it later if needed. Unfollow or mute on all social media. Remove photos and reminders from your immediate environment. Make plans with friends or family for this weekend. Short-term goals, next month. Reconnect with neglected friendships. Start a new hobby or return to an old one. Set and work toward a personal goal.
Focus on your physical and mental health.
Long-term vision, next months. Build a life so full that his presence or absence doesn't affect your happiness. Develop such strong self-worth that you naturally attract people who value you. Become the person you'd want to be with.
The final challenge.
If this message resonated with you, if you're ready to stop giving your power away and start reclaiming your worth, I challenge you to do something bold. Write this affirmation in the comments. My worth is not determined by anyone's inability to see it. I am complete, valuable, and deserving of genuine love. But more importantly, believe it. Live it. Embody it. Because the truth is, you never needed him to see your worth. You just needed to remember it yourself. Remember, the right person won't ignore you, won't play games with your emotions, won't make you question your worth. They'll see your value immediately and consistently show you that they appreciate having you in your life. Until you meet that person, be that person for yourself. Your power was never his to give or take away. It was always, and will always be, yours.